이스라엘 선교 전문 방송 BradTV, 이제 카카오톡으로 만나보세요. BradTV에서 전하는 이스라엘 소식과 기도 제목들, 매주 업데이트되는 프로그램들과 각종 소식들을 이제 카카오톡으로 간편하게 받아보실 수 있습니다. BradTV와 카카오톡 친구를 맺으면 더 이상 메일과 홈페이지를 확인하지 않아도 따끈따끈한 새로운 소식들을 아주 쉽고 빠르게 확인하실 수 있습니다. 자, 그럼 BradTV와 카카오톡 플러스 친구를 맺는 방법, 먼저 카카오톡을 눌러주세요. 카카오톡의 첫 페이지 친구 창으로 가주세요. 오른쪽 하단에 노란색 친구 추가 이미지를 눌러주세요. 돋보기 모양의 아이디 플러스 친구 검색을 누르세요. 검색창에 영어로 BradTV를 검색하세요. 그렇게 되면 BradTV가 나옵니다. 자, 마지막으로 오른쪽에 친구 추가 이미지를 누르면 끝! 정말 쉽죠? 이제 매주 새로운 소식들과 함께 여러분의 카카오톡으로 찾아뵙겠습니다.
BradTV.
This week on Jerusalem Dateline, a U.S. Congresswoman visits Syria and comes back with a message.
We've got to end these destructive regime change war policies and take a stand for peace.
Plus, Tel Aviv may not be Israel's capital, but CBN's Scott Ross finds out how it's fulfilling Bible prophecy and see how one filmmaker is using humor to combat the anti-Israel BDS movement. Hello and welcome to this edition of Jerusalem Dateline. I'm Chris Mitchell. Former Secretary of State John Kerry tried to broker a regional Mideast peace plan 1 year ago, according to news reports. That report follows the recent meeting between Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and President Donald Trump, which included the possibility of a peace deal that would go beyond just the Israelis and Palestinians and bring in other countries in the area as well. But one key Israeli leader says he doesn't think the Palestinians will ever accept the existence of the Jewish state. In early 2016, a secret meeting between Kerry, Jordan's King Abdullah, Egypt's President el-Sisi, and Netanyahu took place in Aqaba, Jordan. The purpose of the meeting was a regional peace plan based in part on the 2002 Arab Peace Initiative. Kerry's upgraded initiative would make Jerusalem the capital of two states, and called on Israel to turn over the entire West Bank to the Palestinians in exchange for recognition of Israel as a Jewish state. However, Ambassador Michael Oren, Israel's Deputy Minister of Public Diplomacy, told CBN News he doesn't believe the Palestinians would ever recognize Israel as a Jewish state.
Because the Palestinians will never accept the existence of a legitimate Jewish state in any borders. It's not about borders, it's about the existence of a Jewish state.
According to the reports, Netanyahu rejected the offer because he did not believe his government would accept it. Last week, during their press conference, both Prime Minister Netanyahu and President Trump implied a regional peace plan might offer the best opportunity for resolution of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict without offering details. Oren said the Palestinians don't have a state because they rejected previous offers for one reason.
The Palestinians hold the world record of a people that has been offered a state and have turned it down, most often with violence. They turn it down not because of the borders. They turn it down not because of settlements. They don't turn it down even because of Jerusalem. They turn it down for one reason every single time. And that is that the price that they have to pay for a Palestinian state is recognizing a Jewish state.
The Israeli newspaper Haaretz first reported on the proposal. The Prime Minister's office declined to comment on the story. Some believe the release of the information may be timed to embarrass Netanyahu, as relations with the U.S. are warming. A regional peace agreement would be a dream for many in the Middle East, but inside Syria, the last several years have been a nightmare. Hundreds of thousands have died, millions have fled, and millions more are displaced inside their own country. As politicians debate the best way to handle the Syrian civil war, One congresswoman who once served in the region returned to assess the situation firsthand. CBN News reporter Abigail Robertson spoke with Representative Tulsi Gabbard to hear why she decided to make this daring and controversial trip.
Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard is no stranger to war zones.
The suffering of the Syrian people has been so great and has been weighing heavily upon my heart for a long time.
An Iraq war veteran, Gabbard voluntarily deployed twice to the Middle East. Experiences that led her to head to Syria for a first-hand look at the situation.
I wanted to go there personally. I wanted to express in some small, minute way the love and the care and the aloha spirit that the people of Hawaii share with the Syrian people, that the people of our country have for the Syrian people.
Since returning home, Congresswoman Gabbard has had a difficult time sharing what she witnessed overseas amidst intense scrutiny from colleagues in both parties.
Rather than having this substantive debate, they are focusing on things that are irrelevant or even not true.
They want to know who paid for the trip, although she insists the House Ethics Committee approved it, and why she met with Syrian President Bashar al-Assad.
It was important to take the meeting with President Assad because whether people like it or not, he is the president of Syria. Any possibility for negotiations to occur, any possibility for a pathway to peace is going to have to include a conversation with him.
Fellow lawmakers disagree, saying they are disgusted by the meeting with a leader who's responsible for thousands of deaths of his own people. Gabbard told me she had not originally planned to speak with Assad, but she wasn't going to pass on the opportunity.
We talked about how we can collectively try to bring stability back to Syria, how refugees who have left Syria will be able to return home. We talked about the history of Syria as a pluralistic society.
She thinks the U.S. should focus on eliminating ISIS and al-Qaeda, not President Assad.
We've got to end these destructive regime change war policies and take a stand for peace.
A Democrat, she criticized the Obama administration's strategy of arming rebel groups.
Most people are not aware of the fact that really since 2011, our government has quietly been providing weapons, money, intelligence, and other types of support, both directly and indirectly, to armed militant groups who are working with and allied with terrorist groups like al-Qaeda in this effort to overthrow the Syrian government.
Gabbard introduced the bipartisan Stop Arming Terrorists Act and became the first Democratic House member to meet with then-President-elect Donald Trump to discuss the Syrian conflict.
I talked with him about the need for us to stop arming and supporting those working with terrorist groups in Syria, the need for us to end this regime change war that Congress has never approved, and that is counterproductive because it's actually working to strengthen groups like al-Qaeda and ISIS, who we are supposed to be focusing on defeating.
But she calls his ban on refugees unacceptable.
We should, as a country, do what it takes to be able to help those get out of the situation where they are experiencing a genocide. And that's where our refugee policy can and should be focused, to help those who are suffering, to help those who are the direct targets of this genocide that is being executed by groups like ISIS and al-Qaeda.
Many Syrian Christians don't want to leave the country, despite relentless attacks.
Syria, for Christians, it's home.
Reverend Harut's church was bombed 4 times, but through it all, they've continued to rebuild and keep both the school and church operating to serve as a refuge for the whole community.
Persecution is caused by the militant factors, militant groups that they are targeting Christians so that they will be going out and they will be fleeing the country. It's not time to leave, it's time to stay.
While in Aleppo, Gabbard met with another priest determined to stay, even though he says Syrian rebels blew up his more than 150-year-old church.
Many people who came from all around the world, they asked me, how do you know that the gangs did this? And I said it very clearly. When you look to their weapons, you can know who exploded the church.
According to the priest, the Syrian government has given them the resources to rebuild the church. CBN News international correspondent Gary Lane has visited Syria and spoken to Christians who prefer Assad over the extremists.
Syrian Christians won't state publicly how they feel about the Assad regime because they fear retribution, but privately they'll tell you that they fared pretty well under Assad. They've been free to worship in their churches without hindrance. What they're really concerned about is another government that will come into power that'll be similar to the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt, where they will have no rights and where they will be attacked.
It's something that's important to the Syrian people that their country remain one that is a pluralistic, secular society, and frankly, one that they hope will be able to continue to be a model for countries, especially around the Middle East, that don't have that freedom of religion.
Congresswoman Gabbard says despite all the destruction she saw, the people of Syria give her great hope for the country's future. Reporting from Capitol Hill, Abigail Robertson, CBN News.
Up next, how the Israeli city of Tel Aviv is fulfilling Bible prophecy. Welcome back. President Trump has pledged to move the U.S. Embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. While the ancient city is the center of biblical events, Tel Aviv has become Israel's economic and high-tech center. But as Scott Ross found out, the bustling coastal city also fulfills biblical prophecy.
Situated on the shores of the Mediterranean, Tel Aviv could be described as Israel's New York City. And in just over 100 years, it's become one of the world's leading startup cities.
All this was said here in 1909, and the vision was to establish here a modern Jewish city that speaks the Hebrew language, a foundation for a Jewish life. The idea was to realize the dreams, the hopes, the prophecies of our prophets, and the dreams of the Jews all over the world. The most amazing thing about the Jewish people is the fact that we keep dreaming the same dream wherever we are through the centuries.
Who were the leaders, the people that founded Tel Aviv?
66 Jewish families, the inhabitants of the old city of Jaffa. Narrow alleyways, sewage in the street, and an oriental city struggling. Jews in Jaffa dream about breaking from the walls of Jaffa and establishing a Jewish neighborhood. We paid in gold for every inch here. And the money was paid to whom? To the Ottomans? Who are the Ottomans? That's not their land. This was redeeming the land of Israel.
Isaac Dror is the education manager of Independence Hall, the location where David Ben-Gurion declared Israel's statehood and its founding fathers signed the Declaration of Independence.
It is the place where Israel was born, but it is also the place where Tel Aviv was established. It was the home of the founder of Tel Aviv. It was the first art museum of the city. In the book of Ezekiel, Ezekiel lived in a place called Tel Aviv.
In 1950, Tel Aviv and Jaffa merged to form Tel Aviv-Yafo. Today, it's Israel's second largest city, and though it's home to all foreign embassies, Tel Aviv is clearly not the biblical capital of Israel and the Jewish people. In contrast to Jerusalem, Jerusalem is more of a religious environment.
This city does not have to bear the heavy load that Jerusalem is carrying. It is the holiness of Jerusalem. And Tel Aviv does not have to carry all this history. Tel Aviv is very, very special in a different way.
Israel's founders sensed they were fulfilling prophecy. In the middle of this secular city, surrounded by construction cranes, one monument says it all.
This is from the Bible, Jeremiah, and it says here, I shall rebuild you and you will be built, O Virgin of Israel. This is the motto of those who established Tel Aviv.
And as we stand here now, the prophecy is being fulfilled in front of your eyes.
In front of your eyes. It is the first time after 2,000 years, the Jewish people building the Jewish land, speaking Hebrew with their Bible in their hand, in the land of Israel.
Today, Tel Aviv is known as Silicon Wadi. What is it about Tel Aviv that so much creativity, innovativeness has come out of this area?
There's more than 700 startup companies concentrated in this city. There's venture capital that is being invested in Israel, which is the highest per capita in the world. Combined, of course, with Israel's culture and with Israel's circumstances, have made Tel Aviv what it is today, the second Silicon Valley of the world.
I met with educator Ze'ev Ben Shahar, who gave us a modern comparison to the founding of Israel and Tel Aviv.
I think the whole venture of Israel is a startup venture. You can see this miracle around us today.
Tel Aviv has the third largest economy in the Middle East.
It's not all theoretical, it affects our lives every day. And I'll just give you an example. Yesterday, I was chatting with my wife on Facebook using instant messenger technology, which was developed here in Israel. I came here using Waze, which is a community-based navigation and GPS system that saves me dozens of hours every month. I parked using Pango, which is an app that allows me to park wherever I want without any difficulty.
I asked some Tel Aviv residents why they live here and what the city means to them.
Architecture is very nice. It's the best city. You can do whatever you want. You can eat whenever you want. You have the beach, of course, that you can go. I think the people are amazing, the most amazing.
You like the life here?
Yeah. I like the way that people are open-minded, and this is a creative place here, which is completely different than in Paris and completely different than in US.
It's the most exciting city in Israel. Everything happens here.
Everyone's telling me that.
All the cultural activities are happening here.
Tel Aviv, it's the center of Israel, of business, of life, of families, of real estate, of everything.
I asked Ben Shahar about the future of Tel Aviv.
I think it's going to explode, not literally, but I think it is going to explode. The amount of high-tech companies, the amount of innovations that are developed here that are crucial to making the world a better place are going to come out of Tel Aviv, and more research and more funding is going to come into this city and hopefully create a better future, not just for Jews, but for Christians, Muslims, Buddhists around the world.
For CBN News, I'm Scott Ross in Tel Aviv.
Coming up, hear how one Christian woman is taking the battle over Israel to the UN. Welcome back. Recently, Nikki Haley, the new U.S. ambassador to the United Nations, made a brief but scathing speech indicting the UN for its anti-Israel position. Here's what she had to say.
I'm here to say the United States will not turn a blind eye to this anymore. I'm here to underscore the ironclad support of the United States for Israel. I'm here to emphasize the United States is determined to stand up to the UN's anti-Israel bias. We will never repeat the terrible mistake of Resolution 2334 and allow one-sided Security Council resolutions to condemn Israel. Instead, we will push for action on the real threats we face in the Middle East.
Many applauded Haley's blunt analysis of the UN's anti-Israel bias, and recently we talked with another woman who's also battling for Israel at the United Nations. Lori Cardoza-Moore is founder and president of Proclaiming Justice to the Nations. I talked with Moore earlier in our Jerusalem studio. Lori Cardoza-Moore, thanks for joining us on Jerusalem Dateline. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Chris. Yeah. It's great to be back.
What have you been doing lately?
Well, Chris, it's been very busy, of course, with the new Trump administration coming in. Of course, you know we're at the United Nations. I serve as special envoy for the World Council of Independent Christian Churches. Of course, we're getting ready to start producing another 12 series of our Focus on Israel show.
With your work at the UN as a special envoy, what changes have you seen from the Trump administration as compared to the Obama administration and abstaining from that resolution 2334 at the end of the year?
Well, I think one of the first big things that Trump did was putting Nikki Haley, submitting her name as the UN ambassador for the U.S. Nikki has had a long history of being very supportive of Israel. You know, she was the second state to pass a bill, an anti-BDS bill in the United States of America that dealt with economic and trade. So we're looking forward to working with her on some of the issues that we've been involved in, anti-Semitism at the United Nations, the whole boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement that is so pervasive in that culture.
How can people be praying for this peace of Jerusalem?
Well, I think one of the key things, of course, is praying for the leaders, the Prime Minister, for the decisions that he has to make, but also praying for the United States of America and our leaders, for Trump to be wise and discerning as he executes some of his policies to defend Israel.
Well, Lori Cardoza-Moore, founder and president of PJT, and thanks for being with us.
Thank you for having me, Chris. It's been great to be back on.
Up next, see how Moore is using humor to combat the anti-Israel BDS movement. Welcome back to Jerusalem Dateline. The growing worldwide movement against Israel claims it practices apartheid, like the former regime of South Africa. Known as BDS, they urge countries and businesses to boycott, divest, and sanction the Jewish state. We just talked with Lori Cardoza-Moore, who produced a cutting-edge documentary that attacks this notion, and it does so with satire and humor.
The film is called Hating Israel and features Christian comedian Brad Stein and his search for the truth behind BDS.
And so my journey begins.
The documentary takes a humorous approach to puncture the stereotype of what the world says about Israel.
They say it's an apartheid state, the world's pariah, an occupier, basically the world's greatest boogeyman. Even better than North Korea, Iran, and Sudan combined, especially if you ask the United Nations. What do you got?
It is as if they enter the Twilight Zone.
There is a fifth dimension, beyond that which is known to man.
I hope that the format that we created with the humor does not in any way trivialize this very important subject, but makes it palatable enough that people that maybe don't think it even matters will give it a listen and actually think, you know what, this is wrong.
The new platform to deliver anti-Semitism today is through the boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement.
Filmmaker Stan Moore and his wife Lori produced the movie.
We can't just take what the mainstream media tells us. We can't just listen to some of the leaders and academics who are trying to convince us that we should be boycotting Israel. We shouldn't be supporting the Zionist state.
Its cutting-edge nature aims to reach a new generation.
This is not your daddy's documentary, okay? This is aimed at a millennial, younger audience. We got to get to those younger people because really they're the ones that's going to make the difference. Preaching to the choir is one thing, and that will get us so far. But we can't get those young people to understand that hating Israel is not funny.
So your people, Palestinians, have been here how many
years from the time for Adam and Eve?
Especially as Christians, it is our biblical responsibility to stand up and not allow our brother Israel or the Jewish people to stand alone and fight this battle alone.
It's a funny movie about a serious topic.
You're the Shaw. I wondered what happened to you. Thank you so much. He ended up here.
And I just believe that I'm at a time in my career where I can just make money and make people laugh, or I can leave a legacy. And I felt like this was important, that I was going to be willing to put myself in a position where what God has gifted me with as a communicator, to tell Israel's story, to remind Christians that this is your duty by God to defend this nation, these people.
Stein makes a timely statement on the importance of standing with the Jewish people for such a time as this. Well, that's all for this edition. Thanks for joining us. Remember, you can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And please share us on your social networks. I'm Chris Mitchell. We'll see you next time on Jerusalem Dateline.